to Catholicsplaining. Prepare yourself. You're about to be Catholicsplained. And what are we Catholicsplaining today? Why, precious? It is Marian Apparitions with special guest, Lady Gravemaster.
Hello.
Hello. So glad you're here. So glad you were able to make it. And wow,
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I said you could have any topic, and said Marian Apparitions, and probably some history in there as well, because I think that it's very difficult to look at Marian Apparitions without them, because they do tend to happen at very key moments in our history. To get us started off, Lady Gravemaster, could you tell us, what do we mean when we say a Marian apparition, as opposed to maybe a private, well, these are private revelations, but as opposed to something else?
Yes. So a Marian apparition is when our Heavenly Mother, Mary, Mother of Jesus, appears on earth. Usually to specific individuals. You have Our Lady of Lourdes. When you hear her titles, Our Lady of Lourdes, Our Lady of Guadalupe, Our Lady of the Sun, or may also be known as Our Lady of Fatima. Either one. I've heard both. And in the case of Our Lady of Fatima, she appeared to 3 shepherd children. In the case of Our Lady of Guadalupe, she appeared to a single man, whose name just ran out of my brain.
San Juan Diego.
San Juan Diego. Literally San Diego was named for him. I was like, it was right there. But Saint Juan Diego. And as you can imagine, there has been a lot of speculation over whether or not they're real, how much should we put stake in these. Some of even Catholics, I've heard. So there is a place called Medjugorje, and there was Our Lady of Medjugorje. She was recently, I'm not sure if you saw that, recently vandalized.
Mm-hmm.
And the Church of, is it St. Mark? St. Matthew. But the altar inside the church was also lit on fire. The tabernacle was basically untouched, though.
Thank goodness.
Yes, but it is something that even within the Catholic community, especially among converts or more, I would say, modern-minded Catholics, it is, a lot of people have called into question their validity and their importance and why they matter. And the thing is, when we talk about these Marian apparitions, unfortunately, and I'm sure you've seen this, Teresa, some of the hostility around them is actually very heartbreaking. They'll say that, oh, it's a demon in disguise, or that Mary does not possess the power to appear to those on earth. And I always find it really interesting when I ask, oh, okay, so then you would say that, your great-grandfather is not looking down on you from heaven and watching guard over you. Well, yeah, of course he is. Okay, so your great-grandfather, who is not Mary, didn't not the new Ark of the Covenant, didn't birth Jesus. You're saying that your great-grandpa is up in heaven and has this power to intercede on your behalf, but Mary doesn't. And they're like, well, that's not the same thing. And so it's very interesting, because the Marian apparitions are not seen, it's by a lot of these people, because it's not personal for them, whether it's because they haven't researched it or because they have an estranged relationship with Mother Mary, or, as I'm sure you've seen, there's a lot of hatred towards our Heavenly Mother. It's a very sad thing to witness, because these are very important. She does care about us, and her entire mission is to bring us to her Son. So when that isn't the case, where, you know, people are actively rejecting her, or, you know, saying that those miracles aren't real, or the other litany of things. It gets very, very sad. But one of the great things about Our Lady of Guadalupe, Martin Luther, a few years before, I can't remember the exact amount, but I think it was something around like within 1 or 2 decades of Martin Luther schisming and ultimately pioneering the Protestant heresy. 6 million, specifically, like a lot of Germans too, but it was something like 6 million left the church, and then Our Lady of Guadalupe appeared, and then it was something like 13 million or 8 million or something like that joined the church. Like, they were converted to Christ. They were converted to Christianity from paganism. A lot of them from paganism.
Yeah, we know what was going on in Mexico in that area, the very demonic activity. And then the woman clothed with the sun shows up and stomped out that demon pretty hard. And that's how she appears. Actually, isn't the Our Lady Guadalupe? Of course, I should know this. I've seen it 1,000 times. I think she is actually shown stomping on the serpent in that, but
she's not. She is, but she isn't. The moon is actually, so if you look, the moon, that crescent moon, actually has the reptilian like scales on it, and so she's actually that actually represents, you know, the serpent and the demonic forces and paganism, because obviously in Mexico you had the worshippers of the sun and you had the worshippers of the moon, all false pagan gods. So she was clothed with the sun and she was crushing the moon under her feet. That was meant to look like the reptilian scales. And then she has, and the thing is, this was very important to the culture, like to Mexico. So that black sash that is tied around her waist, that is a symbol of a mother bearing a child. So there was absolutely no confusion. Anybody from that time period who saw this apparition knew exactly what all of those things meant. They knew what the black sash meant. They knew what the robes meant. The stars are actually a song. The crescent, the black crescent moon with the reptilian scales on it. It's all very intentional, and it is directed at the people of that culture and of that region. And it's so incredible to think that one man who he tried to avoid seeing her again. He was like, I just won't go by that hill. You know, like Juan Diego was like running away from our Heavenly Mother, and of course she found him. And she was like, what are you doing? And he's like, listen, I can't do this. And she's like, yeah, you can. And it's amazing, you know, all of these, so the story, or the way the history goes is, he comes up over the crest of the hill, and in the middle of see the black crescent moon. So in the middle of the, or on all over this hillside, and we're in the middle of winter, so we should not be having really any vegetation. It's just covered in roses.
Yes.
And so he scoops them up into his tilma, and he takes them to the bishop, and then when he lets the roses fall, the image of Our Lady of Guadalupe is on his tilma. And because the bishop had asked for evidence, and so Juan Diego was like, I can't. And then Mary was, of course, like, I will give you the evidence you need. And that led him to the hillside. Well, this image, Our Lady of Guadalupe, the tilma is centuries old, and it hasn't deteriorated, it hasn't decayed. This is a fabric made of cactus fiber. Like, this stuff.
Yeah, I should have brought it.
Yeah, it doesn't last centuries. That is for sure. This is not canvas. This is not leather. This does not last. But it has. It has lasted for centuries. It has been studied and restudied and tested, and they absolutely cannot, like, they have no idea how this image was placed on the tomb. Like, they're like, we just don't understand. Like, there's no paint strokes, there's no brush strokes, there's no blotching. It's not like he went somewhere and could have it pressed on, because there's no impression marks either. So the one of the amazing things is just the existence of this image is truly incredible.
Yeah. And the church has never had a problem with having these things subjected to all forms of modern science. And they've done x-rays and all sorts of stuff, and they can't explain it. And I think I'm correct in saying that they don't even know the kind of ink or that's on it. Am I right on if that is the case with this? Yes. So they have no natural explanation. And this might be a good place to point out that the church, when she presents these apparitions, the most that she will say is that they are worthy of belief. So you can, from a certain point of view, be a good Catholic and not believe that this was the Blessed Virgin Mary. You do not have to believe. But of course, you should not be speaking disparagingly of it either, because it's almost impossible to do so without speaking disparagingly of the Blessed Virgin Mary, which is something that to be a good Catholic you need to do.
Yeah.
And there are some, though, that are not approved or not have been said worthy of belief. And so I wanted to clarify that Medjugorje is currently one of those, though one could argue that there's some pretty good evidence. The official church has not said anything about it, and I think part of it is because they're still ongoing. But the church is usually very cautious. So the most she will say is that it's worthy of belief. So Our Lady of Guadalupe is definitely worthy of belief. And when you see what it did in converting all of the South Americans, and even today, what it means, the patroness of the Americas, that this is something that if you are a Roman Catholic, even if you are not of Hispanic origin, but if you are an American, this is our gal, this is Our Lady, this is our banner. And during the Cristeros and all of that was going on during the horrible communist, all that awful stuff that happened in the early 20th century, all those atrocities, it was the banner of Our Lady of Guadalupe would be bringing there. And so you will see people using this, particularly at pro-life marches or whenever Holy Church is attacked. And guess what? When people who hate our Lord and hate Our Lady and hate the church and the enemy, guess what he will do? They will try to do their best to desecrate this image.
Absolutely. And it's exactly. It's important to remember, in Mexico, a lot of people don't know this. It is actually illegal to be Catholic in Mexico right now. To this day, it is illegal. But it is not enforced.
Definitely
so
it's not.
After the after the atrocities, because it was genocide. It was they were wiping people out. So after the atrocities were committed and eventually the communists lost, because they always lose. Don't be on the losing side, guys. Communism always loses.
Yep.
But they eventually, it got to a point where they were no longer, I don't want to say that they were no longer popular, but essentially they had killed so many Catholics. I believe
they even tortured a child. He's now a saint.
Yeah. Viva Cristo Rey. Saint Ruiz? No. Oh my gosh. There's so many guys. I'm so sorry.
I know it's hard, and you've had a long day of work. Saint Jose Sanchez del Rio.
Yes, Jose Sanchez del Rio. So he was 12 or 13, and they tortured him. They made him walk for miles without shoes. They beat him.
Mm-hmm.
They starved him, and then eventually they made him dig his own grave. And then his dying words were "Viva Cristo Rey," and then they shot him, and he fell into his grave. A 13-year-old kid, like, stood up to these communists, and so as you can imagine, slaughtering children, who refuse to bend to your whim, is not a very popular place to be.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that happened, there was significant backlash, and it was there was
the execution of Blessed Miguel Pro too. That was actually caught on film, and he did. That's where the rallying cry, because he yelled out "Viva Cristo Rey" right before they shot him, and they thought that would be a propaganda picture to frighten the people and the opposite happened.
Yeah, and so and that's why with Marian Apparitions, when you're talking about church history, it happens at they happen at crucial points, and at very often some of the darkest times, Our Lady will appear. And so with this particular one, the government made it illegal to be a Catholic. Oh, excuse me, hiccups. The government made it illegal to be a Catholic, and they were hunting people down, executing people, torturing people, murdering people. And then when they realized that, the U.S. might come a-knockin', and this was probably not a good look, they agreed to, I forget the exact terminology, but it was, they essentially agreed to cease the prosecution of Catholics. And so to this day, it is actually illegal to be Catholic in Mexico, but it is not enforced.
Yeah, they didn't strike it off the books, it sounds like. I don't know that off the top of my head, the details. But yeah, so this is where, in the same place where Our Lady showed up in the 1500s, 16th century, to this day, that it's still there and still inspiring and still conquering evil. If you well, I've talked before on Catholicsplaining, of course, the role that Mary plays in the church. There's no being, next to God, of course, and that Satan hates more, because he actually hates her more than he hates angels, because the idea that a woman would be so honored, a lowly, not just a human, but a woman would be so honored in the church. And of course, that's why he hates men, he hates saints and all of that, but he definitely hates Our Lady.
He absolutely hates Our Lady, and that is, I've heard many priests and many, I've, as you can imagine, I've listened to a few podcasts and a few interviews, and I've gone to different conferences, and something that really struck me the very first time I heard it, because it wasn't anything that I had ever considered, because I've never been pro-choice. I have been very conservative and very traditional my entire life. I have never in my life was I like, oh, I need to go find myself. I need to just throw caution to the wind and all my inhibitions, and just let myself loose and go find myself. I always that was never something that I wanted. I never hated men. I adore my grandfather, my dad, my brother, my uncles, my cousins. I grew up with very strong, capable, hilarious, witty, intelligent men as examples, and very healthy marriages. My aunts are incredible people. My mom is, I wish I could be a third of the incredible person that she is. I was blessed enough to be surrounded by all of this example of God's love. And my generation specifically like the older generation, so the older millennials. So I am
Mhm.
on the, I'm considered a mid to younger millennial, um, and the crazy thing is, I never watched stuff like Gilmore Girls or Sex in the City or One Tree Hill. That, like, we didn't have cable because we were poor, but that turned out to be a blessing because so much of what these girls modeled in my generation came from shows like that.
Mhm.
um they're like, oh yeah, we're gonna move to the city and we're gonna sleep with random strangers and we're not gonna care because it doesn't matter because men do it, so we should be able to do it. And I said, that's terrible advice. I was like, this is quite literally the, if your friend jumps off a bridge, would you do it? And but they were like, just leaps and bounds, we're just going over the bridge. And
Mhm.
now it's very interesting because you have a very defined schism inside of the millennial generation, inside of Gen Y. You've got the ones who were have more traditional masculine conservative values, and you know we married early, we had kids young, we didn't, or at least we married, not all of us could have kids because infertility, that's a
Yeah.
whole other deal with like birth control and what it did to that
Well, what
to
it
my
did to women and
generation.
broke down the
Yeah,
relationship between women and
absolutely.
men, and
Yes. Well, and
it was
also,
supposed to be for women, but it
well,
was
men
a
benefit.
lie.
It was a lie. Men definitely benefited also, but also it destroyed. Like, I had two cousins who they were like, the 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 most insane thing to me, I remember thinking was, we're gonna put you on birth control for your acne, and I was like, what? Because it's hormonal. I was like, that seems really bizarre to me, but I mean, that, like, if girls want to do that, that's fine. I never went on birth control, and thank God, because I have friends who got married right out of high school, and they tried for like 10, 11, 12 years to have a baby, but they had been on birth control since they were 12 for their acne, and they couldn't get pregnant
It's
because of the
very
birth control.
possible, yeah, that there might
Like,
have been a connection,
yeah.
and so with all of that, the femininity,
Yes, of Mary.
fertility, all of these things, who does Satan, hate more?
Yeah,
Because Mary is the antithesis to that. Mary
absolutely.
is not just a symbol, but of course, but she is purity and someone for women
She
and
is
men, of course, to look up to. Um,
she is the perfect woman. Like, that's how God modeled her, because he he needed a pure, like, this is where a lot of people also get upset, but Mary was prevented from the stain of original sin because God cannot exist where there is sin. Like, nobody would disagree with you that God does not exist where sin exists. There's no sin in heaven. So if God cannot be where sin is, if sin is the absence or the separation of God, then Mary had to be without sin. Otherwise, God could not have been there.
yeah, that is
And
definitely a theological explanation for the Immaculate Conception, which is
mhm,
so misused. So many people think that
yes,
that's referring to the miraculous conception of our Lord, but the Immaculate Conception refers to
to
Our
Our
Lady
Lady.
conceived
Yes.
without original sin. And speaking of which, and speaking of communism, this
Mm.
is the one that happened right before everything went to Hades in a handbasket. This
Yep.
was right before the Russian Revolution, the rise of the Soviet Union, and the great evils that communism and National Socialism, if you know what I mean, would do.
Mm.
And I don't know if you wanted to talk a little bit about Our Lady of Fatima.
I love Our Lady of Fatima. I mean, it's impossible to not love Our. I rem- so I remember thinking, I was like, oh, one day maybe I could be Mary, and like, when, because Jesus has to come back, right? Because of course you're like 5 or 6, you hear about this, and
Mm.
so you're like, oh, well, like, maybe I could do that, and then it's like, oh no, there's just the one Mary. It's just the one time, and when Jesus comes back, it's not as a baby. And this with Fatima, it's so incredible because the 3 shepherd children, they had secrets revealed to them. And of the secrets that have been shared, some have come to pass, and others have not. Because Our Lady said, daily rosary, prayer, and fasting. I wish. So if you ever need a guide or an example or some type of heavenly devotion for fasting and the power that it holds, Our Lady of Fatima is crucial to that, because as she told the three shepherd children, these things can be avoided through prayer and fasting of the faithful, but they must do it. They must fast. And there was a story that I had heard from from a pretty popular exorcist. I can't think of his name right now, but he was basically on a plane, and this was before he became an exorcist, and he's sitting next to someone who proclaimed to be like a Wiccan or a witch, like does witchcraft. And she was explaining that she was fasting for dark purposes. And that is actually part of what convinced him to become an exorcist, because he said, if the enemy is, if anybody's curious, there's no such thing as like a white Wiccan or a white witch. That's not a real thing in our world reality. That is not a thing. Witchcraft is not a good thing. Okay.
Are you a good witch or are you a bad witch?
Bad witch. Yes, this is not Wizard of Oz. This is not Harry Potter. This is not. These are not fantasy worlds that exist on a literary plane. We're talking the people who are, using relics, who are. Man.
Oh yeah, and I was gonna say, I can't even speak about what they do to the most holy Eucharist.
Yeah, the Holy Eucharist. It just breaks my heart with what they do. But the thing is, even they can't. Even Satan is powerless, especially in front of the host, and that's why they always have to steal. Listen, these people are not breaking into Protestant cabinets, and they're not breaking into Nilla wafer factories and taking little wafers, or taking I think Presbyterians call them crackers.
I honestly don't know, but they definitely go to the Catholic Church for that, because of course it has a valid Eucharist.
They need a consecrated host in order to in order to perform what's called a black mass, which is very dark. Never go to one. Always try to stop it if you are aware of it, but of one going on, you should be go find an authority and attempt to do something to stop it. Pray and fast. That's what you can do. Pray and fast.
Yeah, and fasting was something that Our Lady of Fatima talked about. She talked about fasting, and she also talked about praying the rosary, and taught us a prayer which we still call the Fatima prayer. So if you have ever prayed the rosary, at the end of each decade we say, "Oh my Jesus, forgive us our sins, save us from the fires of hell, lead all souls to heaven, especially those who most need of thy mercy." That comes straight from Our Lady of Fatima. Yeah, so it's added to the rosary. I mean, she's Queen of the Holy Rosary. She's allowed to change it if she wants.
Amen. And it's so fascinating, because when so first of all, for anybody that's curious, if you're ever concerned, or this is the thing, that when people are like, "Oh, I felt the Holy Spirit move," I'm like, "Okay, awesome. Did you drop to your knees and pray when you felt it?" Well, no. Okay, you know what? To each their own. I'm not going to judge. I was like, when the Holy Spirit talks, we're supposed to move. We're supposed to listen, right? But the thing is, if you're ever concerned, is this the Holy Spirit, or is this a fallen angel who still has dominion? Because unfortunately, they have dominion over this earth until Christ comes again. So anytime you feel the Holy Spirit, or if you're ever if there's ever a dream, or you're ever concerned about something, just pray the rosary. And if that feeling gets stronger, it's pulling you closer to Christ. But there have been many times this is why we have to we're told to, and I think it's something that especially cradle Catholics like myself always kind of take for granted, we really need to pray for our priests so
Always,
badly,
always.
because they are constantly under attack. I can't, like, I when you sit there and you read some of the accounts of what priests have had to suffer and what they go through daily, if you read St. Padre Pio and you realize that that man didn't get any sleep, like, I I
St. John
just,
Vianney, he's his feast
yeah.
days today.
Oh, pray for us. I Is that today? It is the 4th, isn't it? My
Yep.
goodness. It's just, it is truly incredible, like, what they suffer and what they go through. And it's so easy to just take that for granted. And Our Lady of Fatima, you know, when one of the things that she made very clear, very clear, is not everybody's going to heaven. I mean, we all know that, but Our Lady of Fatima was like, our Lord is much offended. And if, like, the offense is so great that it's keeping people from heaven. And this is, guys, this is in the early 20th century. This is early 20th century.
Yeah, you ain't seen nothing yet, right?
And so if God was much offended then, I mean,
Yeah.
it
But I
makes me
just love
do.
the way she specifically mentioned Russia by name. She didn't
Yes.
felt the Soviet Union didn't exist and said we need to pray for Russia. And otherwise, what is it? She said certain things that they would spread their errors throughout the world. So even if the
Yes.
Soviet Union fell, that doesn't mean that the errors are not spread throughout the world. And we're fighting it here right now in the United States.
Yep, the propaganda, all the propaganda. It's just, it is incredible. The She did, it's because it isn't like she sits there and has a 4-hour conversation. She arrives with a directive, with a message to the ones who will accept her. I mean, the 3 Fatima children, the 3 shepherd children, you have to think, these are children. So, and the Bible repeatedly talks about, um, protecting the children. Come to me as young, as little children. Humble yourself. Love me as a child. So you now have these 3 children who are very poor, and they come from a poor village. Nobody believes them. And the thing about Our Lady of Fatima, is she appeared multiple times on the 13th of each month, and for 6 months. And on correct me if I'm wrong, Teresa, but I believe it is the 13th of October. Yes, that is correct. The 13th of October is when we had the miracle of the dancing sun. And that was when hundreds of thousands of people were present, but, like, so many people saw the sun move in irregular patterns, like it was dancing.
Yes.
It wasn't just going, it wasn't following its arc. It moved across the sun in a manner that it truly appeared like it was dancing, and thousands of people saw it. And just like with Our Lady of Guadalupe, Our Lady of Fatima converted hearts, minds, and souls back to Jesus. What we're facing today is a really big issue of, well, it didn't happen to me, so it doesn't count. Yep, Our Lady, yes, the
Yeah.
dancing sun. And
And you
so,
see all the people that saw it. Yeah.
oh yeah. And so it's so devastating, because even though this is like a well documented, with thousands of witnesses, declared miracle, um people are just like, well, I haven't seen anything like that, and so, I'm not gonna believe this, because oh, my favorite thing is, she's just a woman. It's like, that. I can't believe you would say that. She's not just a woman. It wasn't any woman that could carry Christ. It wasn't any woman that could be the new covenant. These things are, and I know they're rooted in pride, but it is very much this idea that, they see Mary as weak, And I can't understand that because she's literally the one that crushes the serpent's head. And she just pours out her love for everyone. And I think I put this on Twitter at some or X at some point. I was like, I gotta say, I guess the Protestants are a lot braver than I am because I don't want to be standing in front of Christ and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, you said this about my mom, about our mother." Like that's just I do not personally think that you know degrading and demeaning and blaspheming Christ's mom is a good idea in general. Like common sense would dictate that we should probably just not do that.
No.
Regardless of how you personally feel about her, probably should not like openly mock and degrade her. She is Christ's mother. I cannot believe the I don't know. I
Yeah,
don't
well, we need to
understand.
definitely pray for people. I should add, though, that the original Protestants didn't have this kind of antipathy toward
No,
Our
they
Lady.
didn't.
They still wanted to honor her. I know Martin Luther did, even up to John Wesley. They believed she was ever virgin. They
Yep.
may not have believed what we believe, but not this this belief, this hatred, if you will, that some people do harbor toward her. One of the craziest things about Our Lady of Fatima is May 13th, John Paul II, 1981, is minding his own business, having a Wednesday audience. He turns to look at an image of Our Lady of Fatima, and this is the anniversary, I forget which anniversary it was, of the first apparition. He turns his head and boom, gets shot, but the fact that he turned saved his life. They later went to Fatima and put the bullet in the crown, I think, of the statue of Our Lady of Fatima there. And he did a thing of Thanksgiving. And one of the secrets apparently was about that. So that's something that's a little bit crazy. Like whether you believe this or not, this is history. This is a documented fact. And if you were making this up, you would think it'd be hokey. It's like, oh, and then on the anniversary of Fatima, this happened. And he turned his head. True story. True story.
It's there's I mean she's just incredible. She is genuinely just incredible, and I love her so much, and I fall so short all the time, and I'm just like constantly like, I'm sorry, Mom, please forgive me.
Yeah. Our Lady of the Assumption is my patron saint, my patroness. Yeah.
Oh, the Assumption.
Because that was when I was brought into the church. That was when I was made my first confession, had my first communion was confirmed. And so it's like, well, it's August 15th. Well, I'll take Our Lady. And then I was like, oh, wait, if I took Our Lady on the 15th, oh, yeah, Our Lady Assumption. So, and we see Our Lady assumed in the Transfiguration. This is something that I want to point out. It wasn't just Jesus at the Transfiguration. You do see Moses and Elijah. And so Mary is not necessarily the only one that's been assumed, but we do have biblical evidence for the assumption of Moses and Elijah and Jesus speaking with them. And so Our Lady is doing this, even though despite what I said, where we don't necessarily have to believe it, but when you have popes, saints that find this worthy of belief, I think you're pretty safe in with Our Lady of Fatima. I want to move on to Our Lady of Lourdes, but is there anything else you wanted to maybe say about Our Lady of Fatima before we do?
So as with all of the Marian apparitions, but especially with Our Lady of Fatima, if you ever get the opportunity, this is in Our Lady of Fatima is in Portugal. I cannot stress enough, I cannot recommend enough, definitely go and visit and make a pilgrimage. It is completely worth it. You will not be wasting your time. And there have been miracles that people have, not miracles that have been necessarily confirmed by the church, because as we said before, at the beginning of the stream, the church's process, just like with Medjugorje, how it has not been officially recognized by the church, because they are still going through the oh my gosh, Teresa, what's the word? Investigative process.
Yes.
So just like when a saint is, or when someone is brought up, is the case is, when a case is opened for an individual to be considered for sainthood, they go through a canonization process. And it is very similar with miracles. The Vatican, the Holy See, they have to be very, very, very cautious and careful, because there are unfortunately people who will attempt to fake miracles and to use them for their own gain. And whether and the things, it always seems to boil down to money. But so the church has an entire team of investigators, separate teams, and just literally to avoid bias as best as possible. And they spend years investigating and going over things. Now, for certain saints, like Saint Mother Teresa, she was performing miracles while she was alive, and she basically, she was alive, performed miracles, she died, and then I think it was within 72 hours of her death, there were already multiple miracles attributed to her.
Yes, she was definitely on the fast track.
Yeah, she kind of just she slept for 3 days basically, and then was like, okay, let's go, there's more work to do, essentially. And she was, I think she's one of the few saints that they didn't wait the 5 years after her death. I think she was canonized within 3 years of her death.
Yeah, definitely in modern times. Back in the day, they would go a lot faster, but certainly. And just because the church doesn't necessarily recognize a miracle, that also doesn't mean a miracle didn't happen. It just means that they were not able to prove. Basically, they tried to prove it using science. It just means that you couldn't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, that there is no possible human explanation for it. Like, for example, I know that miracles have happened while someone is also on medicine, but then there's something that's totally unexpected where there's a miracle, but because a certain person was taking certain kind of medicine, maybe the church won't try to say that was it. They can't say beyond a reasonable doubt that it was a miracle. So I just wanted to make that clear as well. So if anyone's out there that thinks that, wait a second, the church didn't declare this a miracle, that doesn't mean it's not. And these are extraordinary situations because, of course, in our ordinary life, this stuff doesn't happen. Ordinary life, the miracles happen in the silence of our hearts, in the conversion of others. It's been misused, but in the serving the poor. And the reason why I say that is everyone starts rolling their eyes, but actually, no, it isn't serving the poor. It's just that the difference took over.
And you know what? That is the reason that soon to be a saint. I cannot wait. He's about to be because he's currently venerable. He's about to be a blessed. Fulton Sheen.
Woo!
One of my I love him. He just incredible. He was so succinct and so capable, and I have no doubt that he and Thomas Aquinas have incredible conversations in heaven.
Oh goodness, yes.
But he was just so impactful and so powerful, and I cannot wait for him to be to be canonized as a saint. I'm excited for him to become a blessed. This is an amazing thing to witness. And he, he said, along with multiple popes, I believe Pope Leo the 13th, 10th, Pius the 10th, maybe. I'm not sure which one. There's been a lot of popes, guys. But I want to say it was Pope Leo the 13th, or the but you cannot be a communist and a Catholic.
No.
Because there is a difference. So this is where when you hear the argument for who would build the roads, and who would do this, and who would build the schools, and who would pay for the teachers, and who pays for the cops, and who pays for so roads existed before, schools existed before, and we went from teaching Latin and Greek in 3rd grade to now teaching remedial English in college. Like, something went wrong, and that would be largely due to the Protestant push of pass the chicken. That would be largely because of the Protestant push for the separation, which is not a thing, by the way. This was in a letter. It's nowhere in the Constitution. It's nowhere in the Declaration of Independence. And it's a intentional misinterpretation or misunderstanding of the First Amendment. But the separation of church and state. What that means is that we can't have, like, a Church of the United... Like, they have the Church of England, which is a whole other schism and heresy on its own, but they had just left that, and so they were like, hey, the government cannot create its own church. That is what, like, that's what the First Amendment means. That is what no one shall be forced or prevented from freely expressing their religion. But what the separation of church and state, what that is referencing is that the government, the U.S. government, Trump can't come out tomorrow, Congress can't come out tomorrow, the Supreme Court can't come out tomorrow and be like, this is the Church of the United States. Like, that is what it was talking about.
Yeah, and that they also cannot try to take a role in the church. Like, they cannot appoint our bishops or things.
Yep. Because then you end up with you end up with a Canterbury situation.
Exactly.
And so that is what they were specifically focusing on. And so the church, the Catholic Church, was actually largely in charge of universal, because Catholic means universal education. The education that most children were receiving was through the Catholic Church. And what happened was that several prominent leaders who were not Catholic realized that if they didn't do something, the majority of America would be Catholic by like the 50s or 60s. And so this push to have the government, to make it public education through the government. And so the government took control of the schools away from, yes, Protestant churches, but heavily the Catholic Church. And so wrestled it away from the church, and we have seen a rapid decline since. And all of these things existed, but they existed through charity. Charity is not the same thing as communism, and the two get inflated by communists all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Charity,
just because the government doesn't do something, that doesn't mean it doesn't get done. And there's no greater server of the poor in history than Christians, and the difference that we have. Well, I want us to move on to Our Lady of Lourdes. So Our Lady of Lourdes is where we heard I am the Immaculate Conception. So this is connected in many ways with the Immaculate Conception. Mm-hmm. This is Saint Bernadette Soubirous. She was a very uneducated young woman. She even said her words that she was stupid. And she was out minding her own business. Because she had asthma, she couldn't run ahead or something, and she was by this little grotto area, and this beautiful lady showed up. And one of the things that helped when they were doing the investigation, they were like, and then the Blessed Mother showed up, or what? And she says, I don't know. I just know that it was a beautiful lady, and this is what she did, and this is what she said. And it wasn't till the very last apparition that she said, I am the Immaculate Conception, because they said, well, ask her name. I am the Immaculate Conception. And pretty soon after that, the Immaculate Conception was was defined infallibly. But a miraculous spring bubbled up around this area, and people have been healed from it since this time. It was, what is it, 1853?
Close to that. And it's you can purchase, I know that sounds very crass, but you can purchase water from the spring, but it always sells out very quickly, and they're only allowed to take so much per like year or something like that, or per feast day, because they tend to do it on the feast day of Our Lady of Lourdes. But they will bottle some of the water. The church is not the one selling it. I will make that clear.
Yeah, I was about ready to say, because we're not allowed to do that,
Yeah,
actually. That's bad.
The church is not allowed to sell it. However, there are people who essentially what you're purchasing is not, so they try to make this very clear when you are ordering it. You are paying for shipping and for the glass vial, because it always comes in glass. So you are paying for the glass vial and you are paying for the shipping. You are not actually paying for the water. So I want to make that very clear too, because yes, the church, obviously, like, the church is, that would be turning the temple into a money laundering operation.
Simony,
Yeah.
It's one of the greatest sins you can actually do. It's
yeah.
like
So
a highway to hell kind of a sin.
Yes. So the church is not out here, like, I don't know where this idea comes from that the church is like guarding all of these miraculous relics and all of these miraculous objects, and like charging an entry fee. That's not a thing. If somebody is charging you an entry fee, you're being scammed. Now, there are tour guides, like, this is similar to like tour guides who will charge you for their guidance, but they can't charge you an entrance fee to Our Lady of Lourdes, to the grotto, or to Fatima, or to
yes, nothing
Guadalupe.
like that.
Yeah, there's nothing like that. But there are, again, this is what I said, like, you have to be very, very careful, because there are people who are not above using the devotion of the faithful to enrich themselves.
Yeah,
and they'll deal with that. Yeah, they got to answer to that in their own time. But if you ever order water, I don't even remember how much it is, like, that they have in small glass vials. But if you are ever able to order some, they are very clear that we are not charging you for the miraculous spring water. It is the glass vial and it is the shipping, and because, like, obviously the church is not going to sell the water.
No.
But it's just like the Teresa, help me. He every year on his feast day, Chrism.
The Saint Januarius, are you thinking? No.
Yes.
Okay.
That's one of them. There's another one.
Okay.
Saint Januarius, I don't think he's the amber.
No, he's the one with the liquefied blood. Yeah, while you're thinking about this, I wanted to address what Salty Traveling Sea said. It was some small town. I don't remember the name of the church. We had a holy grotto in the North Woods of the Holy Midwest. Yes, it is very popular to have replicas of Our Lady of Lourdes in the grotto. You'll see them just coming down the street in some places, and out in the middle of nowhere. Definitely in Ireland, that'd be the case. But even at your parish church, it is not uncommon that there is a garden. It's like, oh, here's our replica of Our Lady of Lourdes. I think because it's just so beautiful and just such a great place to pray and have a devotion, and it's just very ascetic. I got to visit Our Lady of Lourdes, and they do a procession every evening. It is unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. It's really amazing. Yeah, because she said, "May let processions come toward me," and things. And another French one is one that is very, very popular devotion. Do I have the picture here? Oh, I messed up my introduction before I was sure that the picture was going to come through. But the Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal, you will see miraculous medals everywhere. Like, people wear miraculous medals, people hand out miraculous medals. And it was a nun, Saint Catherine Labouré. I'm probably mispronouncing it because I'm not good at French. And she saw Our Lady in the chapel and was told to strike the medal, and it became a very popular devotion even to this day. And you'll
World
see
War II.
Oh yeah,
it was huge in World War II for the Allies, and even some of the Axis on that, because you got to think, half of Germany was Catholic. Like, Italy was Catholic, Austria was Catholic, and so lots of lots of people in the Axis would take a devotion for Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal, and it's really interesting when you read about how, like, when they devoted themselves to her, they either like broke off, or a lot of them were just straight up murdered because Hitler did not like Catholics because he couldn't control them.
Yeah, so here's a close-up of it. Yeah, you'll often see these. It's very popular to have your crucifix and then Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal there. Yes, soldiers had them. And also keep in mind that many soldiers didn't have a choice.
Yes.
Sometimes you were conscripted into it. And so individual souls, I do know, like my grandfather, after World War II was over, he met some individuals and he's like, they were my brothers. It was just, what would you have done? What could you have done?
Yeah, exactly. No, and I'm currently wearing Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal with a Saint Michael medal. So
yay. Yeah, and, I got a whole bunch of them in French and brought them over and handed them out to people.
The saint who I was thinking of was Saint Nicholas of Myra. I knew this. Like
Santa Claus.
Santa Claus. We have first class relics. So a first class relic is a actual, like, it's a bone or blood or like hair, like something that is of their body. Hair. Saint Lucy's eyeballs. But
heart.
So they are in. So since the transition from Myra in modern Turkey to Italy, at the Basilica of di San Nicola in Bari, Italy, in 1087, the relics exude a clear, fragrant liquid traditionally called manna, or sometimes myrrh or mirin oil, or unguent. And it has been reported that since his burial, the liquid is collected annually on May 9th, the feast of the translation of his relics, and then there's a main feast day of December 6th, and so they are able to, the small amount gathered is diluted with holy water and distributed to the faithful as a sacramental, believed at having healing properties among other miracle properties. So they are still working. This is the beautiful thing about being Catholic as well. So, not to knock the idea, because obviously, like, eternal rest in the Lord is obviously what we've been promised, like, that we will, once our hearts cannot rest until they rest in you, right? St. Augustine, or St. Augustine, and depending on which pronunciation you want to use. But the saints are not just like chilling up in heaven. They are still, like, this is something that I try to explain, especially to, like, my students. You are an instrument of God's will here, and we always pray that we can be the most perfect instrument of his will possible here on earth. But when you get to heaven, as it has been explained by multiple saints and by Jesus himself and by angels, you are perfectly aligned with God's will. You are perfectly aligned with God's will. So now you are a perfect instrument of his will. So they aren't just like this modern idea that everybody gets like their own individual room in heaven with all of this, with like stuff that you get, earthly things. Like, this always blows my mind. They're like, yeah, when I get to heaven, it's going to have a flat screen TV and a cooler full of beer that never runs out. And I'm like, no. Like, that's not actually what's promised. If anything, you're going to work and pray in perfectly, and and the joy you're going to feel of having that divine purpose revealed to you, and that understanding that will be revealed to you. I mean, that's what we're chasing. Like, we're not chasing brewskis in heaven. Sorry. I know that one of my friends who is a former, she said she was agnostic, but I think she was actually more atheist. But she called herself agnostic, and she's now Catholic, and she always assumed that heaven would just be the best parts of life here on Earth. So like walking on a beach looking at a sunset, which is of course God's handiwork. But you know, that isn't what
it's hard to describe what the beatific vision is going to be because we don't know what it's going to be. But yeah, that sometimes that it'll be a completely like anthropomorphic kind of thing, or that's the wrong word, I know, but that the beatific vision, that you're going to be there gazing on God, and we can all use whatever images that might help us with that. And yes, you are correct that they are in God's, perfect will, and they're very powerful intercessors. And of course, known as more so than Our Lady. And so I wanted to also say one that is one we definitely need to pray to a lot. Let me find it here. Where did she go? There we go. This is one you'll see a lot when you're in Ireland. Our Lady of Knock, where Our Lady appeared to several people, as you see here. And it was Our Lady, St. Joseph, St. John, not St. John the Baptist. I think it was John the Evangelist.
John the Beloved, the beloved disciple.
And Jesus as the Lamb of God slain, so they see it as a Eucharistic. And Our Lady appeared toward the end of the 19th century.
19th century. I only recently learned about Our Lady of Knock, mostly because I was like, it's very interesting to me. Like when I was like, man, how come I've never heard of a Marian apparition in Ireland? I feel like Ireland would be a really good place for a Marian apparition. You've got St. Patrick and you've got St. Bridget, and it's very Catholic. And then I went looking and I was like, oh, okay, I was just ignorant.
It's okay. It's all right. Yeah. So it's a very powerful one because it's very much tied to the Eucharist.
Yes.
A lot of Irish people felt like it was a sign that maybe some things were going to get better, maybe as a bolster for what was about ready to come with some of the uprisings and everything that happened. And nowadays, of course, we all know we don't even need to say why Ireland needs Our Lady and St. Joseph and all of them. But it's a very, very powerful one. It is not uncommon that you will see in just souvenir shops, like normal souvenir shops, Our Lady of Knock, along with rosaries and Catholic things. So this was a silent one. There were no messages given, but people think that just the whole appearance was the message because of the symbolism. And so it's connected with devotion to the Eucharist, devotion to St. Joseph, because we talked a lot about, how big and awesome and powerful Our Lady is. And she is, because she's the Ark of the Covenant and all that she has a singular grace, that she has singular role that God has given to her. But another great saint, perhaps the next best one, is St. Joseph, who is the guardian of the church, because he was the guardian of the Redeemer and the Holy Family. So St. Joseph is also a very powerful intercessor.
Yes, and it is, and he and Mary are both mentioned in Genesis. So when God is cursing the serpent, and saying like, on your belly you will crawl, and then he refers to, I will put enmity between you and the woman. And so enmity is obviously an enemy. Well, God does not make anybody bad, so we're talking about someone who's directly an enemy of Satan, and that enemy of Satan will be between the woman and Satan. And who, like, quite literally, who was the protector of the Holy Family, who is known as the terror of demons? That would be St. Joseph. So, all kinds of fun things. You know where I learned that one? At another conference. I didn't know that either. I was like, wow.
Well, but with the enmity between the woman and Satan, that's referring to Mary.
No, the woman is Mary.
Yeah.
The enmity between them, the enemy of Satan, the enmity... I don't know. You can take this up with a priest.
Okay, I've never heard that, but that doesn't mean it's not true, because we definitely know that is one of St. Joseph's title is Terror of Demons. Yep. Yeah, that's in the Proto-Evangelium.
Yes, and I was like, when he said that, I was like, I have literally never read it that way ever in my entire life. And then he like broke it down, and I've never felt more dumb.
Hmm. Interesting.
Um,
Interesting. Well, you know, we
but
don't know everything, but either way, definitely Saint Joseph's role is indispensable
yes,
in the church and in the Holy Family and all that. He was
yes.
the man who raised the human that raised and was head of the Holy Family. So we love Saint Joseph here.
Could you imagine
Ah,
like? And he is also the patron saint of a happy death.
yes. So it is very common when people are dying to pray to Saint Joseph. There's many
Yes. Could
prayers
you
for that.
imagine die like literally Jesus literally holding you as you die?
Yeah.
That I mean, there must be no greater comfort in this world, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, to know that. One of my students asked me. They were like, why did Saint Joseph have to die? And I was like, well, he was human. And they were like, yeah, but so did he just go up to heaven and start building things since he was a carpenter? And I go, I
Much the
mean,
mind of a child. Yeah.
I'm sure like if uh because like, I have a lot of metal heads and rock heads. They were like, "Is he the one building the stairway to heaven?" I said, "Listen, if anybody was gonna build a stairway, uh, it would be him." Because I don't know, have you heard of the
Oh yeah, the stairway
miraculous
with the
staircase?
sisters.
Yeah,
That
down
they
there in
can't
Santa
explain it.
Fe.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to this day, engineers cannot figure out how it is standing. And so I was like, if anybody was going to build a staircase, it would probably be Saint Joseph. But I was like, I'm pretty sure the church does not teach that. And they were like, "Aw." I
Yeah.
was like, "Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, guys."
You
I
know,
don't.
there was a big hit in Ireland by Dana. She had another big hit about the Holy Father, but she had a song called Lady of Knox. If you never heard it, it's pretty good. It was a very catchy song, popular in the 80s. So a lot of good music. Totus Tuus was
Ah, the
another one.
80s.
Yeah, that was
Totus.
back when those kind of songs could be like on charts. Like there was one called Totus Tutus that she wrote for the John Paul II's visit to Ireland, and it was top of the
Wow.
charts there. Yeah, so good stuff. Yeah,
I
we
did
love the
not.
80s here.
I didn't know that. I love the 80s. 80s was a good. Well, okay.
Google it.
So the 80s was a good decade. A lot of bad also happened.
Well, of course it did. Yeah. I mean, well, yeah.
I.
I am aware. I'm aware. It's not
Oh
all
yeah.
perfect, isn't it? Is it?
None of them
Well,
are.
all right.
But
Like, what are
yes.
we to do? Pray the rosary. That's number one. I
Mm-hmm.
think that if I were to give anyone advice, or if you're tempted to despair, my first question would be, are you praying the rosary? That's a start. Because guess what? We can't do it on our own, but when God hands you a gift on a silver platter, use
Mm-hmm.
it. And
Absolutely.
we need to bring that back. Yes, very powerful moment in our history. And it's still called Our Lady of Victory in the old calendar, though if you
Yes.
use the extraordinary form in the Mass, and Our Lady of Victory Our Lady of the Rosary in the ordinary form. That's a discussion for another day. Odin was here last week talking about Latin Mass, so he, of course, had lots to say about that.
I'm sure he did.
Yeah. Oh boy, my goodness. All right. Well, Lady Gravemaster, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing with us and walking us through this and giving us tidbits of, I mean, history and things that I had either not thought about for a long time or didn't know, and Catholicsplaining these things for us. Uh, is there anything coming up on your channel?
I hope so. I hope so. Um, but it's life is very very busy. But I will so I am working on I'm working on a couple of things before season 3 of Rings of Power drops. So I
Bleh.
have a couple of things I'm working on there because wait. And then um, I've been working on a video series for about a year now,
Oh my.
and well, it's a Leviathan or a Hydra. I haven't quite determined which, but it is essentially the feminist manifesto and how it has invaded so many, pretty much all aspects of education, of entertainment, and it is desperately trying to consume the church.
Yeah. All our
they
institutions. Yeah, definitely the
yes,
church. Yeah.
they are. I mean, feminism is absolutely demonic, and I don't say that lightly. But yes, so it's a video series that I've been working on because it just, the more I research and the more I find, it's like, oh my gosh, that's a whole 45 minutes on its own. I can't add it to this video. Like, so it's kind of, it has sort of grown, and so now I'm trying to figure out the best way to release it and the order to release it in,
Okay.
because this is pretty incredible, but like in the bad way. Like,
Yeah.
not incredible good, incredible very not good. Because especially the calls for females in the priesthood have exploded. They desperately want the authority of the church, and that's why, like, the Anglican Church, they they I mean, they're wearing vestments
Yes.
that, because they are mocking the authority of the church. They desperately want the authority that comes with Catholic, with God's, with the Church of Christ, with the Bride of Christ. And I can't, I can't fathom, again, this goes back to our Holy Mother. She was not made a priest because that was never her, that was not her role, that was not her calling. That's not who Christ calls us to be. And so if Mary wasn't a priest, like, why would we think that we should be, for one? Because, like, that's not following the example that Christ set at all. But then in the next breath, you also have to wonder, like, you have to realize, I say this in my video, where it's so devastating, because essentially what feminists, particularly feminist females, are saying is that the place and calling and authority, though it is a different authority, but that Christ has called us to and has bestowed upon us, and the responsibility that we have, they're saying that that's not enough, and they, like, refuse to fulfill it. They're just like, no, that's not what I want, so we're not going to fulfill it, and we're in fact going to say that it's actually bad and it's sexist and misogynist, and we should be able to be priests too, because reasons. It's just, it's devastating once you start seeing it and paying attention. It's just, it's permeated everything: publishing, editing, like, I mean, I believe I've told you this before. I had a friend who wanted to publish a story, and it was literally a story based out of Africa, specifically like Morocco, and it was this historical fiction of this man who left his tribe to go seek help from the Pope, and was met with all of this hostility and with all of these challenges. And was trying to find anyone that could give them help, because everybody's just like, well, you're gonna have to go to Rome for that, like, because it is supposed to be a historical fiction. Obviously, like, we have bishops and stuff of that nature, but his goal was Rome. And so the book is actually, the main character is a black man, and I say this because it's important, because guess what the publishing house told her?
I can only imagine.
You need more representation. I don't see anyone from a certain community in here. Perhaps you could just add someone, like, as an aside, that, maybe this individual goes to for shelter one night, and he realizes that they are, they are they. And
they
and,
them.
And she was like, no, like, that's has nothing to do with the story. That would be like, it completely derails the story. It has nothing to do with it. And they didn't publish her.
Yeah, that's the way it is nowadays. Yeah, you have to check off certain boxes, and that's why we do see it in all of these stories. So
Yeah,
that's why
because
independent stuff is needed.
yes, it's why it's taking off, because these are bottlenecks. If you create cultural bottlenecks, you don't need to control all the millions of authors and the millions of artists and the millions of singer-songwriters. You don't have to get them all on board. You just have to get the 3 or 4 people who are responsible for distributing books and music and film on your side, and then they'll cut off they'll cut off the what is it, not basically
Access.
it was something, it's, yeah, it's, they'll bury it they'll bury it before it's even alive, basically.
Sure.
Like, they never get you never get the opportunity, because the 6 or 7 people who control that particular industry's distribution are against you.
Yep.
That's what a bottleneck is, and so that's how they've been able to control this for so long. And for all the evil that social media has caused, because it's a lot, I will say that one of the good things about social media is the fact that we're able to find independent artists and
Yes.
editors and authors and filmmakers who are genuinely trying to create beautiful art, and medias for us to enjoy, that are not laced and poisoned with all of this propaganda. So
Yeah.
it is pretty astounding. But that, as you can imagine, I mean, that explanation took like 7 minutes. So the video is like, the series has taken forever.
All right.
But
Well, be sure to subscribe to Lady Gravemaster so that you can see that. And I want to also thank John Sue for being here, Salty Traveling Sea. People were in and out. I think Steve had to go to bed, but in any case, he probably would have been here and calling you Gravy, as he always does. So, all right. Well, I want to thank you. And over on my main channel, I'm going to be continuing with some musings on Rings of Power, some more about the so-called love triangle, Wuthering Heights literature, other things, or any musings that come across my brain that I just have to share with you all. I'm going to continue also on this channel with more Catholicsplaining, more Therese of Lisieux, the story of a soul. We love St. Therese of Lisieux here on Miss Martin Muses, especially the rose, showers of roses everywhere. Everyone gets a rose. And Magnifica Humanitas. I'm going to continue with that. Book of Romans, all of that, or anything else that you want Catholicsplained. So once again, thank you, Lady Gravemaster. It's always great hanging out with you.
Yeah, same.
Yeah. All right. So have a great day, everyone. Have a great day, and be certain to pray the rosary.
Yes.